All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Culture Clinic, where we help people leaders shape great workplace culture so that their people feel connected and inspired and love where they work. My name's Skay. I'm one of the founders here at Gusto. Been working with people leaders for about the past 10 years to shape workplace culture at their companies. And I'm joined by my colleague, Kwesi. Kwesi, you want to do a quick intro?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kwesi Thomas. Been in HR or in people for about 22 years-ish now. And really with a lot of focus on rewards, culture, recognition. Been sort of in that space as well as general HR as well for about 20 some odd years. And enjoyed doing that in companies like BlackBerry and Shopify and Nortel, if you're going to go all the way backwards. But yeah.
You're dating yourself now.
Yeah, exactly.
So reminder, this is kind of open forum, ask us anything. So feel free to put any questions, comments in the chat. We're streaming live on LinkedIn as well as YouTube. So we'd love to get your questions, and we can kind of pose them here to Kwesi and get his perspective. So today's topic is all around purpose and how to build purpose into your organization. And so what I'd love to start with, Kwesi, is before we kind of dive into some of the questions that have come in, is just like, what is purpose, and how have you kind of seen this woven into the companies that you've worked at?
Interestingly enough, I think it's hard. This purpose is one of those things that's hard to put your thumb on, because it tends to be the why. I think we were to the why you're doing what you're doing, not the how and the what. And we've gotten very good at doing missions and visions and values and those types of things, but figuring out what is that greater why or the impact that you're having as a company is hard to figure out, and then harder to define, and then harder to get a number of people in your organization to understand and buy into. And I've seen, from my perspective, probably the best example for me was when I joined Shopify. It was very clear that we were enabling entrepreneurs to build businesses, or enabling people who wanted to build and start the business to do so. And that was sort of our, everywhere we every meeting, every town hall, every stand up, there was always kind of front and center. That was what we were trying to do, and everyone kind of celebrated those stories, etc. So for me, that was probably where I saw it play out the best. But it's a hard thing to do. BlackBerry was a little bit different. I think at its core, we were probably focused on enabling the security and the communications portions of telecom at that point. So that may have led itself way more to the business that exists today, which is still communication and then security, than it did for the handset business. But building that purpose is hard to do. But if you can get people to buy into it, it can unlock a lot.
I think you touched on there just right at the start, kind of the differences between kind of mission, vision, values, purpose. And so helping our audience here kind of get clear on those. So my understanding is that mission is kind of how we work to deliver on purpose. And the vision is kind of what we hope to accomplish or where we're going to kind of end up. But the purpose, to your point, is like why? Like, why does the company exist? Like, why are we here? And I love the Tesla example on this one. So their mission is really to kind of like how they're fulfilling their purpose is just bringing compelling mass market electric cars to the market as soon as possible, right? And their vision is to become the most compelling car company in the world in the 21st century. But the why is to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy.
Right.
And so it really gets to kind of like the root of like why we're here. So with that, how do I integrate a sense of purpose for my employees at my company? So why don't I just leave it there? So like, what are the strategies? What are the tactics to kind of build purpose at your organization?
I mean, the regular stuff at first, right? You've got to define it in some way, make it understandable, and then be able to communicate it. And so that's probably a huge task in itself in terms of defining what it is, and then figure out how to best communicate it. And that if you figure out those two things, it becomes, the more is now execution. So for me, I always find stories actually telling and showing examples constantly of the why at play. So seeing entrepreneurs in my example and talking about their successes and their struggles and their failures, and showing the work that we're doing, how it actually affects people's lives or businesses or other things positively. I think that's a huge aspect of it. So defining it, then communicating it, and then communicating often. I don't mean like once in a quarter in your quarterly CEO email or something, but actually making it come to life so people can understand it and get a hold of it. And if you let people get close to it, like sharing the results of it, sharing if there's numbers that go with it, great. If there's other aspects, but I think people really have to connect to what you're doing by actually seeing it and not just hearing, oh, by the way, we sold 1,000 handsets. Well, what did that do? Like, how did that tie in? How did those things actually help? I remember we had some way back at BlackBerry days. There was a challenge. I can't remember where it was in the world right now, but it was we were sent a number of devices into that market to help with their communications at the time. I can't remember what it was. I think it was either a earthquake or a tsunami. Cannot remember. It was a natural disaster. And so people connected and understand that we were trying to enable communications in an area where communications was difficult, was to be able to see and understand the why we do, right? So.
Oh, interesting. And I think of like a pharmaceutical company, right? And and they just kind of print profits and all the money and whatnot. But then once in a while, a drug will come along that what's the drug? I think it was for like to cure river blindness. And like it was not going to be able to make money anywhere in the world because the only people impacted by this didn't have any money.
Right.
And I'm blanking on the I think it might have been Merck, but they decided, because their purpose was to kind of help the world become healthier, that they were going to develop the drug and they were going to lose money on this, but they cured so many people of river blindness, and other organizations or drug companies that may not have had such a strong sense of purpose might not have kind of gone forward with that. Right. The other example that I love is the CVS drugstore in the US, and their purpose was around, again, kind of bringing health to their communities, making people healthy. And they decided to stop selling cigarettes in their stores. And it was billions of dollars that they bought. But it did not align with their purpose.
Right.
And because they were, because they did that though, and they were consistent, they were able to build better connections with their customer base. They were able to attract and retain talent that kind of aligned with that purpose.
Yeah, amazing. And it's funny, in both your examples, I mean, for me, the interesting part is you also don't have to be solving world hunger to have purpose. You could be, enable. And so we saw during COVID, some of these companies that we wouldn't have thought about, groceries, et cetera, where we would not have put them, people working in those places, but they definitely have a purpose that was kind of on display. Without that, our infrastructure was failing, our food supply was failing. And so I think defining purpose can be a lot easier than we make it sound. Sometimes we think it has to do with charity or something, world hunger, greener, safer. And sometimes it's just enabling people's lives to be better or enabling the world to be better. And that does not have to be, a huge task. Right.
And and so I just want to kind of paraphrase kind of back to your points there, some tactics for organizations. So getting really clear on kind of like what the purpose is and kind of like why. And so like working with your executive team, if it isn't clear yet, like why was the business created? Why are we in business? Like, why are we doing what we do? And maybe it isn't saving the world, but maybe it is kind of, helping people kind of get their groceries or whatnot. But then the second point that you made was communicating and over communicating. So everything throughout the employee journey there, from interviews to onboarding to ongoing kind of training to recognition programs where you're recognizing people for demonstrating work that
Right.
will have moved towards the purpose during performance reviews, bringing it up there, town hall meetings, sharing stories about people that are kind of living that purpose and whatnot. And then the other one that you did mention was around, so as a third point, kind of results. And so if you are measuring this in some way, if you have like a North Star metric, and so maybe at Shopify, did your team do this where they would share the number of entrepreneurs that kind of helped create businesses every week or something like that?
Correct. There were always a couple metrics that were kind of up there all constantly. Entrepreneurs, value that was processed for them, the different aspects. But yeah, we definitely had some numbers, and so does BlackBerry did the same thing. And I worked with a company that was doing out of Singapore that was doing inventory management for some entrepreneurial companies as well. Same thing. They were sharing the number of companies that they have helped go from spreadsheets and other elements that were managing their inventory onto the platform and doing it sort of seamlessly, giving them more time in their small business. And so, yeah, if you can find the metric and you're able to measure it and demonstrate it, then great.
I think it's something that candidly we could do better here at Gusto is sharing with our team the number of companies that we've helped to kind of create better workplace culture with, right? Like we share a lot of metrics internally with our team just about some of the revenue, the accounts being funded. We partner with the OneDrop Foundation, and for every gift that gets sent out on the platform, we donate a day of clean drinking water, and so we'll share that metric at team meetings as well. But I think that to your point there, the core purpose of the company for us internally here at Gusto is to help other organizations create great workplace culture, and that's not a metric that we're currently kind of sharing during our town halls. So I think something that we should add. I think the last thing that I heard you say there is beyond kind of the metrics, connecting employees with the purpose. And so throughout the organization, employees are going to have their goals, their jobs, their tasks and whatnot. And it's so important to not just kind of tell them what to do, but explain the why, like attach it to kind of the departmental goal or and how the departmental goal kind of rolls up to the company goal and how that's kind of making an impact. So how did you see this kind of done really well at organizations like BlackBerry and Shopify?
I guess the more so it's easy for those who are frontline. They can see the customer. If you're in customer success, or if you're in sales, or if you're in marketing, some of these times you're closer to what's happening, so you can kind of see some of those successes more easily than the person who is recruiting or the person who is closing the books every month, right? And so being able to figure out how to ensure that they're also seeing those stories and hearing those accomplishments and sharing them back with the company is important. For some of the successes for me that I've seen is when your recruiters really understand that the people they're bringing in the company are those helping to accomplish that goal, and they can understand the works that those people are producing, and then pair it back to people. Hey, we just brought on these great engineers that just added this to the platform that's now doing this. And as they kind of understand not just what's happening in their own little circle, but what's happening in the broader circle and it's making an impact, the more that they can buy into it, right? But it's really hard. It's hard because a lot of times we're so focused on taking those 100% of the time and trying to get it into the job that they have to do, and not taking that 5, 10, 15, 20, whatever that percentage of time is, and connecting the team to the larger work of the team. And I think that just helps actually get efficiency, productivity, the whole lineup. The more we can help those people who not necessarily be close to the product or to the customer understand what's happening.
And I think it's actually kind of just a demonstration of how important kind of recognition plays a role in this, right? And so in your example of kind of the recruiter, right? So the recruiter brings on these 3 engineers who then kind of go on to develop some amazing results for the company, right? There might be kind of like recognition in that moment that like, hey, we closed these roles. It's fantastic. But wouldn't it be cool if kind of 6 months later, when some of those engineers are just kicking ass and doing something, we point back to the recruiter and say like, hey, look at the impact. Like, hey, thank you for kind of all the hard work that went
Right.
into kind of bringing these people in, and look at what they've just accomplished. And without your effort, they never would have been here at the company. So thank you for kind of, and so like using recognition to kind of like tie the results that ultimately kind of like roll up to the company's purpose is so critical.
Yeah, you're bang on. And people, I mean, recruiters also are very proud of the people they bring into organizations, so they have a natural. Most of them want to have a natural desire to keep track of how they're doing as well. But there are just ways because they're impacting the company and the culture by bringing in the people they're bringing in. So, but the more I said, the more we can involve those people closer who aren't close to the front lines. I've seen different tactics like having different people rotate onto the phones and help. I've seen some insurance companies where, in really high times or crazy times, other people who aren't in the call center are hopping on the phones to help, right? And those type of examples are where people are if they're getting to be involved in the customer or in what the company's purpose is. That if you can find ways to actually get people involved, even better.
I'm going to skip a question here and we'll come back to it because this kind of ties into the third question here. How do you build purpose into different departments? And so CS, like customer support, it's a little bit easier, right? Kind of you're dealing directly with the customer, like you're seeing the impact that you're having. But if you're a little bit more removed, maybe you're a database engineer, or I heard this example earlier today. If you're at a camp and you're a counselor, you're kind of working directly with the kids, but the kitchen staff are working, tremendously hard kind of behind the scenes to make sure all of the kids at the camp are fed. Another example might be in hospitals. So the doctors and nurses are working directly with the patients, and there's just so much purpose just built into that role directly. But what about all of the cleaning staff at the hospital? And we work with a lot of healthcare kind of providers that have cleaning staff on payroll. And so how do we think about building purpose into different departments?
I mean, this one to me is very simple. There's two big things that jump out to me. One, recognizing, and this is not a shameless plug for recognition. This is my honest opinion about by recognizing people's efforts and making them feel valued. I think there is something that you can't buy. Like, you've got to just do that. If you recognize people, thank them for their efforts, and connect what they're doing to the accomplishments of the companies or the purpose of the company, that goes a very long way. And the second one for me is sharing their stories, like sharing and celebrating those people who may not be involved at the front line, right? And so that is, at the camp, very simplistic example, at a camp, at some point during that camp week, definitely bring the kitchen staff out and make sure the campers celebrate and thank them, right? Let them understand how their impact is going, right? Or and connect as much as you can connect them to it. You should. And same thing with the hospitals, for example. Whether that's a video every once a year that thanks the cleaning staff for all the work they do, whether that is, some sort of way of ensuring that they have been connected to the purpose and they can see how what they've done is aligning to the purpose of the company.
I'm going to take it a step further, and I love your example at camp, because I remember when I went to the camp, they'd bring the kitchen staff out and they'd march them around kind of the camp hall, and everybody would be kind of drumming on the tables and making a big deal about it, and it was a whole lot of fun. But with the hospital staff or any kind of frontline industry, it is critical to kind of give the people that are dealing directly with the customers the ability and the tools to recognize those that are supporting them and to create those experiences, right? Because it's going to be really difficult. Well, it's not difficult, but it's going to get missed a lot of the time if it's just kind of the company or the director level that's recognizing kind of like the cleaning staff, right? But if it's the frontline kind of like nurse that has the ability to kind of recognize the cleaning staff that hey, the room is always just fantastically clean in here, and you just make my job so much easier so that I can focus on providing care to the patient. That person then is getting direct recognition from someone that's dealing with the customer, and they're being communicated like how that's kind of impacting the purpose of what we're trying to do here, right?
Correct.
So I love that. I also love like just the idea of kind of connecting people with the customer, creating those opportunities for people that might be kind of behind the scenes to have interactions with the customers. And so like the example at the camp, the kitchen staff kind of coming out, the engineers that might be kind of like really behind the scenes, getting the opportunity to sit in on some customer success calls or some product discovery calls where they just see how delighted the customer is with like what's been kind of built for them or the service that's kind of being provided. Let's jump back to kind of the second question here, because I think it's a really interesting one. If your company is not saving the world, how do I build purpose?
It's a hard question, right?
Is it? I mean, most companies are not saving the world. Like,
it's a hard question because for me, my answer is I don't know if people agree with my answer, so I'm trying to figure out how to say my answer when people agree with. I actually think that most companies are serving some sort of betterment, and they are creating some sort of delivery of some positive service for someone. That's why people would pay for the service. And so you may not be, solving hunger, but you are, sanitation being removed from neighborhoods and recycled in the proper way to then hopefully not end up in as little as much ending up in landfills. It's a big deal, right? And so for me, for most companies, whether that is food, whether that is even retail, which might seem a bit more vain in saying, hey, the jeans are jeans and these are like better jeans than these jeans. In some way, they are still serving someone's purpose in something positive for someone's life. And so for me, it shouldn't be that hard to figure out how you're helping or what positive you're trying to have, what positive impact you're trying to have, right?
So I think I'm gonna challenge you on this though, because like I was having a conversation right before this with somebody that worked for kind of a email marketing company.
Great.
And there just wasn't a whole lot of passion for the purpose. Like we're helping to make things a little bit easier for people to send out thousands of emails, but it's kind of spammy, or even like, hey, let's go all the way to the other end of the spectrum, like people that are working at like a cigarette company or something like that, where they're actually kind of like a negative purpose in the world. How, like, what are the other things that companies can kind of do to kind of build purpose if people are not attaching to the purpose of the company?
Well, both of those examples I could spin for a positive, by the way. I won't do it. I think that's where I was struggling with this one, because to me, what are you communicating? You're enabling someone who's got enabling some business to communicate at scale that they couldn't communicate before, to reach more people with whatever that information is. I don't know. I can spin it a million ways, but right.
You can spin it, but like to the employee,
it's got to be authentic.
They may say, yeah, that's kind of BS, man. Like I'm not here for those reasons, but there might be some other, there are other reasons. So like, let's dig into kind of some of those and how companies might be able to kind of like build purpose at more of kind of like an individual or departmental level.
Right. And so there are definitely ways. I mean, some people are going to be, not everyone is going to be at every company for whatever the grand reason is. Some people are going to be there because it's the right work for them at this time in their life. It might be giving them the right work-life balance, the right, it can be just proximity to home because it enables them to get home and pick up their kids from school and then hop back to work. There are lots of other reasons that people will be at a job that will make them perfectly happy, right? And I think if you can, there are people who are just, who are looking for the development for the career they want to have, right? It may not be the role they want now, but it might be helping them to the role and the role they want in the future. And so there are a lot of other reasons and purpose that people can connect with their roles and connect with the people they're working with. I used to love this saying, a gentleman out of, actually the same Singapore, the CEO, he used to say, I used to ask him, what's our point? He used to say, meaningful work with meaningful people. He wanted to build a company that people would have meaningful work and work with meaningful people. And that stuck with me because that was his goal. That's what he wanted to build. And then to not necessarily that's what everyone want to build, but to me, there are definitely other ways of building your company and your culture that people can relate to, buy into, and love being there, that aren't huge purposes.
And I really like the example there, kind of like meaningful people, right? I see this all the time where friends will go and work for a company, not necessarily because they are super passionate about the company's purpose and whatnot, but they are very passionate about the people that work there. Or there might be a specific leader or a few colleagues that they get to work with. And a lot of it centers back to the personal growth that they will experience kind of working with those people. And so, well, companies and HR professionals obviously don't have kind of full control over kind of who's working in what seats and whatnot. They can highlight kind of some of the outstanding leaders that they have to help kind of attract talent there. But the bigger thing that I think they can impact is the development and the training. And we heard this example yesterday in a conversation around kind of Starbucks and the training programs that Starbucks has, and the levels to which they go to help their people kind of achieve mastery. So they have kind of pride in what they're doing. So, they might not kind of fully attach to the Starbucks purpose of caffeinating people. I'm not sure what Starbucks purpose is, but they get people really passionate about the skills that they're developing and their ability to just kind of grow in their roles.
Yeah, I agree completely. There are other ways to connect than I think working. Me personally, I have definitely worked with Shelly DaCosta, who does some of these AMAs. I've worked with Shelly from BlackBerry. We were started on the same day, and we worked together with BlackBerry. We did some work together when she was at another company, and then now today we still do some work together. And that's because Shelly and I would support Shelly. She calls me tomorrow and says, "I need you to come help me with this," I would be there. And that's because I want to support and believe in the work that she's done and how she's helped me in my own career. And so sometimes being at a company, it's a completely different reason for being there, and it's good connection and support for it.
And that's awesome. It's great working with Shelly here as well. What about DE&I initiatives? Have you seen kind of these play a role in kind of helping to kind of drive a sense of purpose and the opportunity for employees to kind of contribute to DE&I efforts?
Yeah, I have seen some companies have real success in connecting people with connecting some and a large portion of their employee base of some of their programs, especially over the last 3, 4, 5 years. There's been a lot of progress in terms of how vocal this area has been. It's been there for a while, but it's been for me a bit louder over the last few years. And I think the success in those programs really, to me, are when they are truly authentic, right? When they're not forced committees, when they're not forced, metrics, when they are really authentic. It's being driven by people who believe and have a passion for it, and it has a realistic goal. It's not like it's not being something that they can actually achieve and they can work towards. And I think for me, I've been a part of a few of them over the past two years or so. Some I'm proud of. Some of them didn't go as well as we thought they would. And I think to me, it was when they were truly authentic programs that were being driven by a group of people who believed in that purpose and could make effect change, but do it in a responsible way. I think they worked out well.
So can I double click on that? Can you provide like a specific example that an HR kind of professional might be able to implement at their organization?
Trying to think I'm also going through like NDAs in my head on what I can talk about. Just like reading, just going through them in my head, like what. For me, a specific example. Allowing so I won't use the company's name, but they developed a small committee that actually got to help review some of the recruiting processes. Okay, they weren't carte blanche. They couldn't just decide to throw away everything and do whatever they want to the talent acquisition process. but they got to really give some input and be heard on some of the practices in that area. They implemented a few of the changes, not every one of them, and which I would expect. But I think that had meaningful impact for not just the talent pool coming in. Well, that'll take time to see how that plays out. But for the employees at the company, that they really resonated with actually having input on how and where they're looking for talent, and how those, some things that would have been a little less, seen, but may have been unconscious of some of the processes, they were able to bring them to light and work on some of them. Definitely can't name that company, but for me, that's a real practical one. But I think where I see it before, so I've seen that fail, is where it's kind of like carte blanche, do whatever you want, rip it apart, we'll do with whatever that. It's still got to be a balance to me of the process, the business outcome, et cetera, and try to implement a responsible D&I process. And sometimes that takes cycles. It's not like we've changed it on day one, but we've changed it. You've got a version 1, and we'll get to version 2, 3, and and we'll get to the end place we need to get to. So I think for me, that's probably an example is actually allowing them to input into areas of business that you might not want to touch.
And those committee members were just employees kind of throughout the organization that could kind of volunteer to be part of that committee.
Correct.
That's cool. It kind of like reminds me and just reinforces kind of the giving employees kind of the opportunity to have a voice, and kind of doing engagement surveys, and HR professionals, this is nothing new. We're doing a lot of surveys all the time, but taking that data and making it transparent to the organization. Hey, here's the results from the survey, and here's our action plan. Here's kind of the why. Our head of people, Noah, just did a great presentation for our org on some of the recent survey results and how they map to kind of what our 2023 roadmap is for kind of the people ops team, D&I initiatives. And so just being very transparent about like, hey, we love getting your feedback because it helps us kind of make these decisions, and that can give kind of people just a stronger sense of purpose, that they're kind of part of shaping the organizational culture.
Yeah, I will add it to my example just now. One of the things I really love, which is really practical, that HR leaders may use or not want to use, that committee was not by volunteer. You had to be nominated. So someone else had to think you were the right persons to be on that committee, not just you thought, hey, I wanted to do this and I have a passion for it. So that really meant that you had to already be demonstrating it. Somebody else had to think that you had the voice and the right perspective to be a part of that. And so I think that really, a lot of times we just take, volunteer, take whoever you send us. I really like the idea of how it's, people being put forward for things that have demonstrated the aptitude and the attitude for it.
I like that. I mean, there's an element of recognition in there too, that hey, I recognize you as a colleague, that you're doing a great job in this area, or would be kind of well skilled and versed to kind of do this. Couple more questions to get to. So how much does purpose matter now when trying to attract talent?
More than it did before. I don't know how to put the percentage on it, but it seems to be growing more and more. I don't want to, we often say it's a change in the generations, but I do think it is a likely part of it is a change in generations. But I also think that people from other generations or different generations are also changing. And so I think in general, I think people want to be attached more to a purpose than they have ever wanted to be, regardless of what generation they're in. Though I think that the current, the younger generations, I don't know what else to call it, may have a bit more of a leaning toward it. And I think that if you're ignoring this, there's a portion of the talent pool you just won't see, right? And to me, there's also a portion of the not efficiency, but the productivity that you probably will not see either from the talents you have. Not every person, it needs to be gung-ho and bought into your purpose, but those people who and the part of your team that is also going to contribute at a different rate. So I think there's you'd be missing out if you weren't looking at purpose as part of your talent acquisition process. But I don't want to go as far as saying it's just a different generation. The generations are also adopting.
So couple kind of follow-up questions here. So I think it makes sense to kind of highlight the company's kind of purpose in job descriptions, in interviews and whatnot, to help kind of communicate that purpose and inspire people to kind of like join your organization. But how important is it the other way for companies to ask candidates about their sense of purpose and how much that needs to kind of align with the company? Like, do candidates need to align with the company's purpose in order to kind of get hired here?
So, I mean, you definitely don't want them saying, "Hey, I completely disagree with your purpose. I have no intentions of being part of your purpose." So, it's like, all squares are rectangles, not all rectangles are square. I'm trying to figure out how to say this the right way. I think you have to align to some regard. I don't know that you want to go as far as saying, "Hey, we're only hiring people who are like laser locked into our to our exact purpose." I do think you want to make sure you're screening out people who are completely not aligned and they don't want to align to the purpose. But I have a hard time saying they have to align to your purpose to be a part of your team, right? I just don't think it's practical, especially at scale. If I have 5,000 employees, I can't expect that I have 5,000 people in the world who are really, really gung ho on, I don't know, my email marketing, right?
Yeah, no, it's interesting, right? Like it's not actually critical, because to our earlier discussion there are other reasons that employees join the company that might
Right.
not be the altruistic kind of purpose of the company, but rather kind of their, I think we touched on a few things, flexibility in their kind of like current life, their own kind of growth and development. So maybe some training programs that you have, or specific kind of leaders that they'd like to work with, D&I initiatives, and getting the opportunity to kind of work on kind of culture initiatives. So there might be kind of other reasons there. But I lean towards kind of like hiring people that are passionate about something.
Agree. That we're 100% aligned with.
And so like maybe it's the engineer that might not align with the purpose of the company, but oh shit, they are really passionate about solving complex technical problems. And like, we've got a tremendous need for that. So let's go all day.
Yeah, if there are any developers looking for work, listen to it. But really, I think you're right. I think you probably said it way more eloquently than I did. I don't want people to detract from our purpose, but if they're show they're able to be able to be passionate and to be able to align to a purpose and be positive about it and communicate that in your interview, great, right? Yeah.
Okay, last question here.
Then you make the drink the Kool-Aid that they all.
we'll convert them.
Yeah, we'll convert them after that.
How important is corporate social impact, and what tips do you have to building it into your organization?
Man, I feel like it sounds like a broken record. It's got to be authentic. If it's authentic and it's woven in naturally and it's part of something that we actually believe in and we're doing, it's not just a tax write-off, or it's not just at the end of the year we go and I don't want to actually use examples. People may have done it and they get upset at me, but you don't go at the end of the year and just do that one task that says we do that one thing once a year and now we've done our corporate responsibility. And I can think a lot, there are lots of activities that we all do as large, especially large corporations, that happens. I'm not detracting from it, but to me, that's good as an activity in team building. That's not part of your social impact and your purpose of the company. And so unless it's really, really woven in, there's lots more than that. But I think it's important. People want to know that you are operating and you're executing on your purpose in a way that still has meaningful impact on the rest of the world and society, right? Doesn't mean it has to be a donation to something. It could be how you align and how you work, or how you replant. If you're using furniture company using a lot of wood, how you're helping to replant or to put back the forest that you're using. Whatever it is, it has to be authentic to what the business is, I think. And if it's authentic, it really works well.
Mm-hmm. It's a timely question, because today is actually Giving Tuesday, and okay. So we see kind of a lot of companies kind of touting on social media, their donations and whatnot. And I think exactly to your point, right? Like, it can't be kind of like a a one-off, we're going to get everybody together for like the big photo op and a bunch of kind of sound bites and then kind of off we go. It needs to kind of be woven throughout the organization, and there needs to be resources for employees to kind of like participate in that purpose. I like the example of healthcare doing kind of blood drives and whatnot, and giving employees kind of, and this is critical, like time off to participate in it, right? Where it's paid time off, and we're going to do kind of our quarterly blood drive, or maybe it's some sort of other kind of volunteer initiative that lines up. I like your furniture example, planting trees, right? And we're going to give people kind of an opportunity to go tree planting, and it's not kind of one day every kind of year. It's rather kind of woven throughout the year, and there's multiple opportunities for kind of people to do that. The other example I really like is matching employees or matching programs for employee donations. And so if we're going to build that sense of purpose among our kind of employee base, if they're willing to kind of align with kind of what the company is doing and make donations, having the company kind of match those donations can really kind of just drive a lot of kind of alignment. Any other ones? I remember you telling me a story at one point about Pay It Forward program.
Yeah, that was a Christmas gift program where the employees received a Christmas, I think it was a gift card, and what their responsibility was to pay it forward. I think we talked about it on the previous call. But that paying it forward was meant to be a way of getting the employees to partner with each other to figure out how they're paying forward, but also to allow them to do some good in a way that they thought was important to them, right? Now that matched that company's overall strategy for how they were doing a lot of their culture building, and it was authentic to how they were working, right? And so, if it's authentic, I said if it's inauthentic in terms of how the culture you're building, then don't do it, right? But if it makes sense, it fits the culture building, and it adds to that repetition of, okay, this is a muscle that we're building and flexing, then I'm all for it. We'll touch on some of the individual one-off giving and the one-off programs with the big picture. It has its place. For me personally, that's not building. Its place is not in building a culture. It's a single event that will be touted and remembered as for its purpose, but it's not part of the ongoing culture that you're building in terms of the building culture, which is what we're focused on this call, right?
Yeah, and I think something that we tried to do to kind of build purpose into the organization from day one, and kind of our core purpose here at Gusto is to help other organizations build a great workplace culture so that people love where they get to go to work. But one thing that we wanted to do to kind of just augment that was a partnership with the One Drop Foundation. And so we partnered with them to donate a day of clean drinking water for every gift that gets sent through the platform. And so like there's just an integration of the purpose and clean water into every aspect of the product. And we think about kind of like sales, customer success. Every time we're kind of helping customers use the platform, we're actually kind of having that ongoing impact, and it's just kind of woven right into the product.
Right, and it's woven into your culture. It's woven into the authenticity of it being part of your culture, right? So if you start to do, I don't know, something that's completely different, tomorrow you want to start building bicycles, might be a great team building event, but to me that's not, it's not necessarily building into the culture itself that you're building around your social impact, which is really around One Drop, right?
Yeah, and something that Joe and I have talked a lot about, kind of next year, one of our initiatives will be around kind of mental health. And we've seen this just dealing with HR professionals and even engagement surveys internally at Gusto, right? Mental health is a really, really challenging thing for a lot of people, and it impacts people teams very directly. And so I think it's something that we're going to try to do more with in the new year, so that we can kind of have that purpose kind of woven into everything that we're doing here at Gusto. So that kind of brings us to the end of the questions. to summarize, I mean, I can kind of like go back here on kind of some of the notes that we've got, but if you're looking to kind of build purpose into your organizations, it's key to kind of get clear on kind of like what the like why the company exists, over communicate that purpose all throughout the employee kind of experience, share those results. And so if you are measuring the purpose in some way, that North Star metric or whatnot, making that kind of visible, sharing those stories of kind of customer experiences at town hall meetings and whatnot, and connecting employees with the purpose is so kind of key, right? So not just saying, here's what you need to do, but explaining kind of the why, and giving people the opportunity to recognize their peers or colleagues that may not have a direct kind of connection with the customer, so that they can kind of attach what they're doing to the impact that they're having. If your company's not saving the world, there are other elements, right? So people might not always kind of attach to the company's kind of purpose, but there are flexibility reasons, there are personal development reasons, getting the opportunity to work with great leaders, DE&I initiatives. So there are lots of kind of purpose initiatives at kind of more of a micro level that may matter, rather than kind of like the overarching kind of company level. We talked a little bit about how purpose matters now more than kind of ever in terms of having those conversations with candidates and also existing employees, right? And then kind of closed off with a question just around kind of how to do social responsibility programs, and making sure that they're kind of woven into the fabric and align with kind of the cultures that you're building there. So Kwesi, great session. If anybody is looking to learn more, you can connect with both Kwesi and myself on LinkedIn. We've got a YouTube channel going with lots of videos on different kind of culture initiatives. So I encourage you to kind of check that out. If you have questions for future AMA episodes, feel free to kind of shoot them over to us, and we'd love to get to them. Until then, Kwesi, it's been great to chat. Have a great week.
Great to talk to you as well, Skay.
All right. Bye, everybody.